Hello and welcome to EV Car Share. So this is my recounting of my journey to Inverness and back, as it happens. The last couple of videos I did, I was showing how I was planning a trip to Inverness. From Peterborough in England up to Inverness in Scotland, it's around 500 miles. Long journey by most people's standards. So this isn't the actual journey. I haven't got footage of driving the journey of the hills of Scotland, although maybe I should have done. This is more focused on the time taken, the charge stops, the time taken at the charge stops, and all that sort of stuff, because that's what the build-up was about. And then I had another video where I compared the apps for route planning between the Ionity app and the Tesla app. The Ionity app was the plan that I was going to take, because with the Kia EV6 you have reduced charge speeds on the Tesla charge point, so it'd be pointless doing that anyway. But also the Ionity app allowed me the membership, the kind of power membership, I think they call it, which gives you the 43 pence charging rate, charging price, which is obviously very good compared to the likes of GridServe at 79 and all the rest of them around that sort of price. And there were Ionity charge points at Newcastle, Edinburgh, Perth, Carlisle, all the sorts of places heading north from Peterborough that I might want to charge at. So that was the plan, and this is the recounting of that journey. So started at 100% in the morning, which related to 67,590 kilowatt hours in the battery. That's a little bit lower than it has been previously in recent times, so maybe there's a bit of degradation there. I'll be doing a video on that in a short while if that's the case. I have some graphs and all that sort of data waiting for you, basically. Outside temperature of 15 degrees. Now, if you notice me looking down, it's because I've got some notes, because it's quite a complicated one to kind of match up all the data to what I'm trying to say. So the first leg of the journey from Peterborough to the Ionity at Newcastle, it's around 200 miles. I think it comes up as 199 or something on the app and on Google, and approximately 3.5 hours of driving. So we started out from Peterborough at 7:34 a.m. I say we because I picked up my mate and his bike. The two of us going up there for a cycling week. I was going to say cycling weekend, but it's a whole week. 7 days cycling around the Highlands of Scotland from Inverness, obviously up from Inverness. On the Kia app, post driving, so this is the logging of what actually happened, it showed 196 miles travelled and 3 hours and 7 minutes. So we were actually faster doing the driving than what Google Maps would predict, which presumably was down to easy traffic that time in the morning. We arrived at Newcastle with 20% remaining, so 80% of the battery was required to get from Peterborough up to Newcastle. The 20% was, in case you're interested, 12,794 watt hours, or 12.7 or 12.8 kilowatt hours. Temperature has risen to 20 degrees outside temperature, and the battery followed that with about 19 to 20 degrees in the battery minimum maximum, which is a little bit on the low side for charging. Had I put on the battery preconditioning, it would have been up above that sort of level, but there's not a great deal of difference. If you're around 20 degrees, you're around the level it would preheat to anyway, just a little bit on the low side. Plugged into the Ionity charge points there and went for a coffee and a little bit of breakfast. Got myself one of those flatbread things, quite nice, relatively cheap. Charge very quickly hit 193 kilowatts initially, and then dropped down to 150 kilowatts from 35% up to 60%. Then down to 130 kilowatts until around 80%, where I then stopped it. The Kia EV6, along with all the other EGMP platform cars from the Koreans, they tend to have this, well, Bjorn Nyland describes it as the Korean siesta. So they get to around 80 something, normally in the low 80s, so somewhere between 80 and 85%. It will vary on each charge session, and then they will just kind of drop down to home charging speeds, kind of 7 kilowatts or below, that sort of level. Just hovering there, and we'll stay there for kind of quite a while, actually, as much as a minute or 2 minutes, before then ramping back up to finish off the last bit of the battery, if that's what you're planning on doing. So if you're in a rush, if you're going a long distance, you're not wanting to wait around, when it hits that Korean siesta at kind of 80 something percent, don't wait, kind of, because even if beyond that, it's going to be slow anyway. So at that point, get back in the car and get going. It's a good kind of trigger to move on. So I stopped it there, and we picked up what remained of our coffees and left. It was 20 minutes total charging and provided 48 kilowatt hours in total, and we reached 81%. So that was the first leg, Peterborough to Newcastle. Okay, so Newcastle to Edinburgh was the next leg of the outward journey. So we're starting with 81% in the battery. That's 54,480 kilowatt hours. It's 20 degrees outside. The battery temperature was now between 34 and 41 degrees. Obviously it goes up from the DC charging, from the rapid charging that we've done at the Ionity charge points. Next leg was from Newcastle to Edinburgh, and decided to go via Jedburgh, just basically for the scenery, over the hills from Newcastle to Edinburgh via Jedburgh. Really nice, good scenery. 101 miles, or 2 hours 20 minutes according to Google Maps. The Kia app retrospectively after the journey told me it was 99 miles and took 2 hours 12 minutes. So again, slightly faster than Google Maps suggested. Maybe it's just because I was driving quite quickly, I don't know. But it gives you an idea that I'm not kind of slow poking or anything like that. I'm just kind of driving as I would. Arrived in Edinburgh, or at the outskirts of Edinburgh, at the Ionity charge point with 47% remaining. That's 30,320 kilowatt hours. Outside temperature was now 21 degrees, and the battery between 24 and 28 degrees. So you can see it's dropped down temperature wise just from the driving, but still remained pretty high. Should get a pretty fast rate of charge. So we plugged into the Ionity. It's in a fairly not remote, it's on the outskirts of Edinburgh, in a newly developed area where there's not a great deal of amenities yet, although maybe that will change. There is a co-op though, so went to the co-op, got some stuff for lunch, just I think kind of the typical lunch stuff you buy, a meal deal, that sort of stuff. Charge hit the EV6 max very quickly, so peaked at 237 kilowatts. Then around 63% it dropped down to 130 kilowatts, and it held this until 75%, which was all I needed for my next leg. So I stopped recording the screen, the Ionity app. But at that point we hadn't finished our lunch, so we sat there and ate more lunch, and I left it charging. So then eventually I decided, well, actually I should probably record the end of the charge. So I did. I restarted the charging at 16 minutes at 86%. It was doing 80 kilowatts at that point, and finally I stopped it at 90%, and I had then 60,908 watt hours, and that was another 20-minute stop. That didn't need to be a 20-minute stop. I had hit the 75% that I needed, take me all the way up to Inverness in probably around 9 minutes, I think it was. So I could have stopped then and carried on my journey, but it was a full 20-minute stop because that's how long lunch took. So leg 3, Inverness, Edinburgh up to Inverness, the final step. Starting with 90%, outside temperature of 25 degrees, and the battery, again, due to having been rapid charging, between 35 and 40 degrees C. So the leg was 167 miles according to Google Maps, 3 hours 4 minutes predicted. The Kia app showed that this actually took 3 hours 17 minutes. This is the first time that I was actually slower than what the Google Maps prediction was. It was only 164 miles in comparison. So slightly slower. There are roadworks on that section, so maybe the Google Maps app wasn't predicting the roadworks quite as well. Actually, it wasn't Google Maps I was looking at, it was Bing Maps. Maybe it wasn't predicting the roadworks quite as well as they were. We arrived in Inverness with 34% remaining in the battery. That was 21,940 watt hours. And the outside temperature was 22 degrees, and the battery cooled down during that drive to between 24 and 26 degrees. Arrival time, so this is the final arrival time, was at 4:59 p.m. So going back to the original start time of, let me have a look, it was 7:30 something, wrong page, go the other way, 7:34. So 7:34 in the morning through to 4:59 in the evening or PM. So that's a total journey time of 9 hours and 25 minutes with 2 20-minute charge stops. So that's 40 minutes of charging. So that would be 8 hours 45 of driving, 9 hours 25 total, 40 minutes worth of charging or time stopped. But I stopped at Edinburgh. I would have stopped at Edinburgh, stopped the charging at Edinburgh at 75% had I been trying to maximize the speed up to Inverness. I didn't need to go all the way up to 90%. Certainly, having ended the journey with 34%, I could have very easily done 20% less in that Edinburgh charge. And that would have been the plan had we not been still eating. So that would have only then been an 8-minute stop, or even less possibly, and then the charging time would have been 28 minutes in total, with a journey time of 9 hours 13. So for me, that is the comparator. That's the journey to compare with, not the one that I actually did. I know it's theoretical rather than real, but it's real. It's just it was a real charge that took 8 minutes up to 75%. It's just that I didn't really leave at that point. So I think it's reasonable to deduct that little value off the end. So that took us to Inverness. So then we stayed overnight before starting our cycling in the morning. So in the evening, while we were out having pizza and having a drink, I took the car to a charge location and put it on a destination charger. So let's have a look at what happened there. So it was a Charge Place Scotland charge point in the car park of was it the town hall or the council offices? I think it was the council HQ, Highland Council HQ I think it was. And that was a 7 kilowatt charge point, so much like I have at home. And I was able to add 28 kilowatt hours in 3 hours and 56 minutes. So again, much like I have at home, 7 kilowatts times 4, 28, all makes sense. And that took the car up to 67% battery, which for me at the time, that was, you have to pay for parking in that car park, and I think it was a 4-hour period, which is why I charged for 3 hours 56 minutes. So that was a good time to finish at that point. Also, that was approaching kind of 10 o'clock in the evening. It was time to go to bed. Got to get up nice and early and be fit and raring to go for a 7-day cycling trip. You can't be laying around. So at that point, that was quite good for me to take it off at 67%, and that's a good level to leave it unattended for 7 days. You don't want to leave it full. They say not to leave your battery full, don't want to leave it empty. Again, it's recommended not to leave it full or empty. Anywhere around the middle is good, so 67 was great. It also meant that I had enough charge to get me to Perth, which would be my next charge point on the return trip. Either Perth or Edinburgh would have been fine. The charging at Charge Place Scotland was 32 pence, so cheaper than what I was doing on Ionity on my journeys up. So it was quite nice to get some charge in on that destination charger. So, did the cycling, lots of fantastic scenery from Inverness all the way up to the north coast of Scotland, back down around past Ullapool, going inland, trying to avoid the North Coast 500 route that's so popular with the camper vans and the weird and wonderful cars and various car rallies and so on. If you're on a bike, you try to avoid all the cars. So gravel tracks, various other places. I do have loads of videos, maybe I will show some now. Did some wild camping out near Lochs, by the beach, in the hills, by the stream, all those sorts of things. Absolute fantastic trip, really good, really enjoyed it. Then got back to Inverness, return journey. So left at 6 minutes past 8 in the morning, so 8:06 a.m. Decided, because we had 67% battery, it was best to stop at Perth rather than Edinburgh. The predicted miles was that I could get to Edinburgh, and I think it was with like 1 mile remaining in range or something. Possibly could have done it, but decided to stop at Perth instead. Distance according to the mapping app, the Bing Maps, was 111 miles, estimating 2 hours 13 minutes. The Kia app, when I actually looked back at it, we did 111 miles, so exactly the same mileage, and it was 2 hours and 11 minutes. So 2 hours 13, 2 hours 11 minutes, just 2 minutes different. So that was a really good prediction as to what we actually ended up doing. Arrived with 25% battery. Oh, and by the way, on that screenshot, I forgot to start car scanning when we left Inverness. I was about 20 miles in before I started it, so that's why some of the data doesn't quite match with what I'm saying. I don't tend to like going to Perth if I've been up to Scotland for Ionity charging, because it is really busy. On the drive down to Perth from Inverness, there were times when it was showing in the sat nav of the car that there was only 1 of 6 available. As I approached, it was 4 of 6, and when I got there, I think it was either 4 or 5 of 6 available. There was plenty to plug into. So plugged in, went inside to Starbucks for a coffee and a cinnamon bun. Outside temperature was quite low on this leg. When we left Inverness, it was 13 degrees. So I used the preheating function in the car for the battery on this leg, and the battery was therefore between 23 and 25 degrees on arrival at Starbucks. Charging started around 190, which is kind of what it normally does, and then peaked at 233 kilowatts and then slowed down to around 130 kilowatts at 64% after 9 minutes. Now, if you are racing somewhere, that is probably one of the optimum times to take it off the charge point, around 60-70% ish, because you can do a good kind of 40-50% of your battery in only like 8-9 minutes. It then went back up to 180 for several minutes and settled down to 160, and we hit 84%. That's when it hit the Korean siesta, so it kind of slowed right down. At that point, because there were people now waiting for the charge points, there was a BMW that had pulled up that was clearly waiting for a charge point, and all the other 6 were taken. I could see out of the window of Starbucks. I decided to go out and move the car. So I moved it from the charge point to one of the just normal bays with my 84% at the point where it hit the Korean siesta. Because I don't like to take up a space if I'm not really charging quickly, or if I'm slowly getting to like 90-100% or something. I had enough. I could get from there down to Newcastle no problem with my 84%. So why leave it in that bay and stop somebody else moving in and starting charging. It just makes sense. So that's what I did. We then stayed a few more minutes longer to finish our coffees and so on before going out to the car and setting off on the next leg of the journey. So there were some minutes wasted there. It might have been 5 or 10 minutes wasted there. I don't really know that I've logged it on that one, but the previous videos I've been looking at Peterborough to Inverness. So it was the outward bound Peterborough to Inverness that I'm doing all the calculations on, not the return journey anyway. So it's kind of irrelevant. So the next leg was Perth to Newcastle. So leaving Perth with 84%, outside temperature 21 degrees, and the battery between 35 and 46 degrees from the rapid charging. This next leg is 156 miles. There was an estimate in the map of 3 hours and 23 minutes. That's on Bing Maps that I've been using for my screenshots. Kia app reported 153 miles and it took 3 hours 30. So that's reporting after the event. That's what actually happened. We arrived at Newcastle with 29%. Outside temperature was 13 degrees. Still had the battery preheating set because it was quite cold on that way back. So the battery preheated again and it was between 22 and 28 degrees when plugged in. As usual, charging started at 190 kilowatts. This time it rose to a peak of 235 kilowatts. Unfortunately, during this charging session, we were in Burger King. I mean, that's not unfortunate. Well, I quite like their burgers. But we were in Burger King and I accidentally pressed the stop on the Ionity charge app while I was trying to have it recording the screen and so on. I was moving my phone, carrying other stuff, doing stuff. Accidentally stopped it at 65%. So I've got two recordings here, one that stops at 65% and then one that starts from there onwards. And I had to pop out to the car to restart the charge point. My mistake, not Ionity's or Kia's. So I went out and restarted it. It picked up where it left off and charged through the siesta at 81% this time and onwards on to 92%. I left it charging. There were no queues waiting at the Ionity there. There's 12 charge points. It's generally quite available in that respect. It's quite busy. There's often more than 6. So it's good that they expanded it from 6 to 12 there at Newcastle Metro Centre. But there was nobody waiting and we were eating, so that's why I left it charging through the siesta and onwards to 92%. I could have stopped at 81%, but if you remember on the outward leg it took 80% to get to Newcastle. So if I stopped at 81%, would I have had enough to get home? It would have been push and go. So the final leg of the journey, Newcastle back home. So I started with 92%. That equates to 62,812 watt hours. Outside temperature was 18 degrees and the battery, because of the DC rapid charging, was between 29 and 43 degrees. Same distance as on the way, around 200 miles, 199 I think. Expecting to take 3 hours and 20 minutes. The Kia app reported that it took 3 hours and 15 minutes and was actually 197 miles. So then we arrived back in Peterborough with 16% remaining. That's 9,960 watt hours. Outside temperature of 15 degrees and the battery had cooled from 18 to 23 degrees. And the arrival time was 7 minutes past 6 in the evening, so 6:07 p.m. That's 10 hours and 1 minute. We left at 8:06, arrived back at 6:07. Now the Perth charge was 16 minutes and 30 seconds and the Newcastle charge was 9 minutes and 20 seconds plus 17 minutes and 10 seconds because I did that charge in 2 parts because of course, as I say, I accidentally stopped it, which was 26 minutes and 30 seconds. Now if we'd stopped at 81% at Newcastle, then it would have been 6 minutes and 40 seconds for the second charge at Newcastle. So that'd be 9 minutes and 20 plus 6 minutes and 40 instead. And that would have got me home, instead of having 16%, with 7%. 6%. Yeah, 5% even. Yeah, because we went 80, yeah, so 11 less, so that would be 5%. So that would have been a bit tight. I mean, it would have made it, but it would have been a bit tight. But that would have sped things up. And of course, remember at Perth, I took the car off charge and allowed somebody else to take the bay, and then went back into Starbucks and we finished off our coffees, and I don't know if we went to the toilet or not at that point, but there was probably 10 minutes there as well. So that's why it's taken a lot longer on the way back. It wasn't really because of the car, the way it was charging or anything like that. It was because of the time we spent at the stops, and also there will be some degree of kind of traffic involved as well, I guess. So 10 hours and 1 minute, more than the expected amount of time, but again, I think it's a reasonable amount of time anyway, down from Inverness. So that just leaves the final comparison to the original predictions I did in my previous video. So as mentioned earlier, I'm only looking at the outbound leg, so we're looking at Peterborough to Inverness. That's the one that I used in the earlier videos. It's the one where I have the best data for going in the actual journey as well. So the Ionity app in the previous video said 8 hours 52 minutes is how long it would take, with a charge duration of 36 minutes. So we were pretty close, I would say. If I had stopped at Edinburgh at 75% and not charged through, then while eating lunch, which I think we have to take that data, then the total time would have been 9 hours 13 minutes with a charge duration of 28 minutes. So Ionity was saying that I would need to charge for a total of 36 minutes. In actual fact, I only needed to charge for a total of 28 minutes. So that's 8 minutes less time that I needed to spend charging. That's probably because the efficiency of the drive was better than Ionity predicted. It was saying I would go to a lower percentage each time and need to charge up from there. So the actual amount that I needed to charge was less, and that's obviously equates to less time. It predicted that the time taken for the driving would have been a bit quicker. Some of that may be around the driving into the bay, getting out, plugging in. There's always a little bit of overhead on the arrival at a charge stop and the departing from a charge stop that is not part of the driving, and it's not part of the charging. It's kind of the transition time. Yeah, that's a good word. Let's call it transition time. So I don't think the Ionity app takes into account the transition time. I know in a better route planner you can put in that value. You can say I'm going to spend 5 minutes faffing. Faffing time. I like that, in fact. Faffing time. You can say I'm going to spend 5 minutes faffing every time I stop, therefore add that in. And it will use that in its calculations as well. It will also use that to determine whether it's best to do a 2-stop or a 3-stop strategy, or 1-stop. Sounds a bit like Formula 1 now. So I went for a 2-stop strategy on both the out and the back. I think that's best. But again, you could maybe do a 3-stop strategy if you preferred. So 9 hours 13 minutes with a charge duration of 28 minutes was really how long it took me, which is pretty close to the Ionity prediction. The Ionity prediction was, what's that, maybe 20 minutes quicker. So yeah, that's a little bit of traffic, or a little bit of faffing, or staying at a stop a little bit too long because you're having a coffee or something like that. It's the same journey, it's not miles different. I don't think I would have done it any quicker had I been driving in a petrol car or a diesel car or anything like that. I would still have to stop. I wouldn't do that entire journey, 10 hours, almost 10 hours, without stopping. Maybe you would, but I wouldn't. Tesla app, now it said it would take a Tesla Y 10 hours. I cannot say how accurate that would have been. I don't have a Tesla Y to try it with. I can't do that and compare, but that's what the Tesla app told me. I think in my previous video someone commented and said that the Tesla app is quite pessimistic in that respect. It doesn't want to tell people they'll get there, and they don't. It would prefer people to get there early, and I can see the reason for that. That seems quite a reasonable thing to do. I would have thought that the Tesla engineers, all being software experts, they would be able to get the prediction a lot closer though, than almost an hour longer. It'll be interesting to know how long that journey does take in a Tesla. So if anybody who owns a Tesla Y long range and lives in Peterborough happens to be doing a journey up to Inverness, I know it's a long shot, but then please let me know. I'd love to know, using the Tesla superchargers and your Tesla Y, how long it takes you to get from Peterborough to Inverness. But as I say, it's a long shot. I don't think that's going to be forthcoming. So overall, that's it. The journey was very good. The car gave me no problems whatsoever. It's really comfortable to drive long distance. Seats are lovely. The aids when you're on the motorway, the adaptive cruise, the lane assist, really do take some of the fatigue out of journeying a long way. You can really just sit back and just monitor the car rather than driving the car as such. Obviously holding the steering wheel at all times, because it will tell you otherwise that you need to hold the steering wheel. Charging, nice and quick. Ionity, nice and quick. Ionity, nice and cheap as well. I haven't done calculations on cost. I will do that as another video. How much energy I used, how much cost per stop, and all that sort of stuff. So wait for that one coming. But yeah, as a general drive, it was nice. I had no problems. I didn't have to wait at any charge points. I managed to get in straight away, no problems. There and back, all the charges, no problems at all. So all is good. So that's it for today. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, then subscribe to it. And obviously, discussion's great, so put any comments you want in the comments down below. And I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I will speak to you another time.